It's amazing how images can get recycled out of books, and the book itself can become relatively unknown. Witness the image I used yesterday arguing about Irish Iberians and of how the Irish were descended from potentially from Negroes, as the book put it, of black people. And here's where that came from. It's not a very well known book. It's by a man called H. Strickland Constable, Ireland from one or two neglected points of view. And here it is at Ulysses Rare Books. And this copy is sold out, but the listing is still there. And you can see it here on the left of the picture. You can see how it would have appeared originally. And you can see the title page. And you can see the cover. And you can see the book goes for, I don't know if that's a normal price for it. It's certainly not in good condition, so I imagine it would be a fantastic sum in good condition at €95. But who is H. Strickland Constable? Well, I couldn't find a huge amount out about him, but I did find that he's linked to the Strickland Constable family, who are a family of with extensive branches and ability. He doesn't seem to be the most, shall we say, prominent member of them. He seems to have been a bit of a crank who churned this odd sort of rubbish out and who seemed to have a bee in his bonnet about the inferiority of the Irish. But if anyone wanted to go to the National Archives near Kew in London, they've got the Strickland Constable family's sort of papers there, and you could always ask to look at them. I'm sure they wouldn't go potty if you asked nicely. I've been down there and had a look through things in the past. But it's been raised as a point of concern with me that what I showed you yesterday might not actually say what I read out on the article, because the article I used yesterday reproduced it so we could read it more plainly. So here we have the picture from Strickland Constable's Ireland from one or two neglected points of view blown up. And you can read that quite nicely, can't you? The Iberians are believed to have been originally an African race who thousands of years ago spread themselves through Spain over Western Europe. Their remains are found in the barrows of burying places in sundry parts of these countries. The skulls are of low prognathous type. They came to Ireland and mixed with the natives of the south and west, who themselves are supposed to have been of low type and descendants of savages of the Stone Age, who in consequence of isolation from the rest of the world had never been outcompeted in the healthy struggle of life, and thus made way according to the laws of nature for superior races. Well, my reply to that, to Mr. Strickland Constable, he's talking absolute bloody nonsense. And even in the era he was writing it, apparently, even where there was a contested view of, how shall we say it, the equality of the Irish to the English, most people would have considered this man a fringe weirdo. Certainly the Protestant ascendancy in Ireland would have considered the local peasantry to be possibly from another world, but even they would have probably considered this guy to be a bit of a nutter, to put it mildly, because it was quite obvious there was plenty of historical record of the Irish interacting with other countries, and that went back for thousands of years. But if anyone else wanted to read more of Strickland's work, and he does emerge as a rather odd figure, the Wellcome Collection in London has some of his stuff that's downloadable. Like, he seems to have had another bee in his bonnet about vaccination. Doctors' vaccination and utilitarianism. You don't need to log into these, by the way. They're not that sort of academic site where you need to have credentials to get in on this one. I wouldn't recommend it otherwise, because you wouldn't be able to get it. These are available to the general public, these ones. Letter on vaccination to a medical practitioner, our medicine men. Observations suggested by the cattle plague. fashions of the day in medicine and science, doctors, vaccination, and utilitarianism. Unfortunately, they don't have the book he wrote about Ireland, but it's a fascinating book in so much as really what survived from it is that one image that's been repurposed and has now entered into the domain of, how shall we put it? People have certain views about race and ethnicity, and it keeps popping up and up and up. And it journeyed across the Atlantic with the Irish, and then it popped up in things like Harper's Weekly and all sorts of other places where it was used to show how the Irish were an inferior race, and it was repurposed again and again and again and again to play into cartoons and caricatures, which many people are probably familiar with, showing the Irish as gorillas or apes. Now, that's all tied to political issues in America of the time and stuff like the Know Nothing Party and nativism and political squabbles in America. But it's amazing how the image has outlived its own time. And nowadays, the image is used by people to promote white supremacy. But they always keep forgetting to read that bit down the bottom. If anyone challenges me that it's not down there again, or tries to argue it's not, I will go so far as to order a copy of the book from an academic source as a loan, and I'll show it to the screen, point blank. And then I think that will shut their yap. It's been quite funny to watch the reactions of some people to this, as they're not amused by it because it shows the illogic and contradictions in their thinking. And it shows where they've been trying to appeal to Irish people to support their racism and their strange views on blood purity, that possibly if you're Irish, you're best off not supporting people like that. Because I, as a child of two Irish parents, don't want to be supporting people who would use material like that. Material like that shows my antecedents as ape-like is not something I want to support. On the other hand, I don't want to be supporting anything that characterizes people like the Negro over there as ape-like either. Because the people who publish that sort of material are only interested in dehumanizing and objectifying humanity as a whole, and the only group they're interested in is the one in the middle, the Anglo-Teutonic, and they're only interested in a very small sector of that they personally have identified themselves as belonging to, and everyone else doesn't. Because that's how blood purity works, of course. You're never going to say, I don't belong to the group you identify as the pure blood. You always do. And I'm sure we'll see some lovely reactions to this video. I'll leave this alone after this, but I found it quite funny, the reactions today.